Chapter 12. MSV Bellerophon. Da threw the Bellerophon through several wild turns, barely dodging Reaper's weapons fire. But they were drawing the monstrous thing towards where they needed it to go. The shell that camouflaged this system was unlike anything Da had ever seen before. When they had entered this system, it had been crystal clear that they had passed through some kind of artificial barrier. It had been Tyler that had asked the obvious question, how come the barrier doesn't rush back in? The answer was a zone of distorted gravity. Only 2 meters thick, it as a bubble around the system. Solid objects like spaceships and Reapers could push through it like it was tissue paper, but the gas couldn't cross, thus maintaining the status quo. Creating the gravity bubble was the job of a network of satellites. These were unarmed when built, but they had been refitted with anti-asteroid lasers since construction. "Come and get us, you blasted metal octopus," Da said. "Crag," Tyler said into the intercom. "How many EM grenades do you have down there? Enough to fry a small city, but they won't even scratch that thing's paint. Don't worry, we're the ones doing the painting here. Put them all in a crate and get them down to the main airlock." "Will do," Crag out. Several more wild turns later, a button on Tyler's console lit up. Crag had opened the inner doors to the crate inside the airlock. As if on cue, a Reaper shot barely missed the ship. "Running out of time here," Da said. Tyler slammed a button and the airlock cycled. A crate full of electromagnetic grenades sailed through space with all the speed it could muster. The Reaper didn't even register the crate until it exploded. But the grid that kept the gas from rushing back and most certainly did. And then it broke a major rule. Throughout the galaxy, everybody knew that lasers couldn't travel faster than the speed of light. That was a rule of physics that was carved into the universe itself. The Quarians, however, had found a way to bend the rule. The satellites projected a hollow tube of distorted gravity. The laser was then fired down this tube, and for every second that passed inside the tube, 12 passed outside it. As for why the Ain Jallet had not seen the network, the answer was simple. They had flown in and out through what was basically the solar system's front door. While ships could easily punch through the gravity bubble, that gave away the existence of the satellite network, which the locals wanted to keep under wraps. So they had created a hole in the network to hide the secret. But the Bellerophon had gone off the beaten path, forcing her to push through the gravity shell. She'd also gotten a close look at the satellites and figured out a thing or two about them. Like the fact that they were programmed to defend the solar system from natural hazards, like asteroid and comets, not warships and Reapers. Unless you gave it them a very clear signal. And a crate of EM grenades exploding fit that bill. The grid cut loose. The Reaper chasing the Bellerophon called itself Ban Maho. It meant dark spirit in the language of a long-extinct species that nobody remembered. Ban Maho watched as dozens of targets appeared out of nowhere. Based on the fact that they weren't moving, it realized that they were some kind satellites. And then the laser bolts hit. The Reaper screamed as 2 of its tentacles were sliced off. It targeted the nearest satellite and prepared to fire. And then several nukes hit it. SSV Ain Jallet. The Reaper was still chasing them. Taylor was doing the best flying of his life, dodging laser bolts like it was nobody's business. Rick McKinley had made his way to the bridge, but with the enemy on their back, there was no way for him to take the helm, so he had gone to Plan B, which was to get behind the sensor station. "Crap," Taylor snapped. "I'm running out of space here." They needed a genius move, and they needed it now, or this was going to end badly. And then Rick had an idea. It was a crazy idea, but it was still or nothing. "You up for something crazy?" McKinley said. "Always, boss." Taylor said as he took Ain Jallet through another turn. "What do you have in mind?" McKinley grinned before he started explaining his insane plan. Ravager hated the Ain Jallet with a passion. This blasted, cursed ship kept dodging his shots. Then it suddenly turned around and bolted right for him. Ravager and his fellow Reaper Zarak were forced to split formation. Ravager turned to regain his weapons lock. But the human vessel was not where he expected it to be. Then he spotted it and realized it was spiraling away from the plane of the solar system. He turned and resumed the pursuit. In sick, Zara blinked. Taylor had pulled a crazy Ivan and now was taking them towards the shell, but they were taking the short route. The bubble surrounding the new Rannoch system was not a sphere. Instead, it was an oval. While there was no such thing as up and down in space, you could go in those directions if you pretended the solar plane was a solid disk. And right now, Ain Jalet was basically diving under the plane. Alas, so were the Reapers. "We're hitting them with everything we've got, but it's barely making a dent," Harris said. "I'm open to suggestions." Zara said. Rodriguez looked at the sensor displays and had an idea. It was crazy and desperate, but it was better than nothing. Museum of History. 2 husks fell from cover fire by Barnaby's team, while Zhukov's team shot another 3. Hell was continuing to burn, and they were still throwing zombies into it. That was the good news. The bad news was that they were losing ground. Holding the entrance had become impossible, so they had retreated to the Grand Hall. "Still with us, Avar," Zhukov said as he killed an Asari monster. "Alive and shooting these ugly bastards," Avar said before putting 2 rounds in a Tyrian male, "but they keep coming." "Tell me something I don't know. Even if you weren't allergic to it, you should never eat Borgat. It takes like rubber." Zhukov laughed as he shot another husk. Across the square, Maria Barnaby lay on her belly and peered down her assault rifle's scope. Barnaby wasn't alone. She was accompanied by her team and several Quarian defenders they had picked up along the way. They were on the roof of one of the buildings surrounding the square. Using the fact that they had the high ground to their advantage, they were picking off as many husks as they could. Oddly enough, the husks were not trying to scale the building they were on. Instead, they seemed obsessed with taking the museum. And then it clicked in her head. One of the entrances to the Prothean ruins was in the museum. That was what they were really after. The question was, why? What were they afraid of? She didn't have any answers, but the Reapers had no way of knowing that, so her plan was to keep shooting husks. The longer they could keep the enemy from reaching those ruins, the better. Shelter Alpha 8. Aaron and Olaf had told the Quarian children all about their adventures in space. It had helped with the noises leaking in from the outside. Despite them being deep underground, they could hear explosions, gunfire, and Reaper laser beams. "They're going to kill everybody, aren't they?" Hera asked. "That's their plan, isn't it? For every planet that has an advanced civilization," Aaron said, "in the entire galaxy," Olaf added with a nod. Saying it out loud made Olaf's stomach twists, but not saying it wouldn't make it go away. "I wish there was something we could do," Jan said. "Instead of just hiding here. We're children. What can we do against killer octopuses from space?" Olaf wished he had a different answer than nothing. A heavy silence fell over the room. In the command center, Admiral Harash and Vice Admiral Rackle were looking at tactical maps. The ground forces defending the underground shelters were making the Reapers bleed for every inch of the planet. But the AA grid was almost completely wiped out, and the fleet wasn't doing well either. Their numbers had been reduced, and the remaining ships were under attack. Despite everybody fighting as hard as they could, it would take a miracle to save New Rannoch. And from what they were seeing on the maps and displays, their luck had finally run out. Chapter 13. MSV Bellerophon. The Reaper that had been chasing them was getting hammered by the satellite grid, but it was still not enough, and then Da and Tyler spotted 3 signals approaching. "Please tell me those aren't more Reapers," Tyler said. "The sensor resolution is horrible," Da began. "I can't tell a brick from a passenger line on this cursed thing." She was behind the helm while Tyler was manning the sensors. Her fingers flew across the controls. "But I know we have 30 seconds before they get here." Tyler cursed. The last thing they needed now was uncertainty. And they still had a load of Krogan to deliver to the surface. Of course, if they got blasted to pieces, that was not happening. Da swung the Bellerophon to a new course to put distance between them and the approaching signals. But then time ran out. The 3 signals, whatever they were, cleared the shell. Ban Maho had blasted several of the satellites, but they kept shooting. The primitive nuclear bombs had blinded it for a moment, allowing the freighter he had been chasing to escape. But once he blasted enough of those satellites, it was only a matter of time before he tracked it down and destroyed it, and then he spotted them. 2 Asari cruisers and a Turian cruiser. They opened fire on him right away. SSV Ain Jalut. Ain Jalut dove into the shell. Flying through the shell at FTL speeds required careful navigation, and in the case of the Ain Jalut, there was another complication. Normandy-class ships had state-of-the-art stealth systems. But when the ship went to FTL inside the nebula, those systems were worthless. Rodriguez knew all this, but he also knew that they weren't going to lose the Reapers by playing it safe. He activated the intercom and gave Taylor an order. The ship swung to a new course and jumped into FTL with the Reaper following. "Come on, you stupid octopuses, follow," Rodriguez said. Zara just hoped that the crazy move they were about to pull wouldn't kill them. They went in and out of the shell, like a dolphin jumping out of the water and then diving back on the surface. This didn't stop the Reapers from chasing her, but the fluctuations were keeping the Reapers from paying attention to where the Ain Jalut was running to. After the gas giant of Netta's had turned out to be a bust as a source of helium-3, they had needed a new plan. And Lieutenant McKinley's guess had been right on the money. When they had arrived for the first time, he had guessed that the locals got their helium-3 by converting regular helium from the shell. To do that, they had built Conversion Platform Alpha. And the section of the shell underneath wasn't helium, it was helium-3. For safety reason, this area was normally fenced off by force field barriers, but the crew of Alpha saw Ain Jalut coming and realized what she was up to. They opened a section of the force field, which Zara could see on the scanners. "Come on, you bastards, follow us in," she said. For now, they were outrunning the Reapers. Alas, there was only one way to find out if they would make it. MSV Bellerophon. "Yes," Tyler yelled, leaning back in his chair. Da and Tyler watched as the new arrivals tipped the balance in the defenders' favor. He turned to Da and grinned. She grinned back. "Let's go deliver our cargo bay full of Krogan," Da said. "Sounds like a plan, Skipper." They swung the Bellerophon to a course for New Rannoch. Behind them, the Reaper was now taking a pounding. As they entered the atmosphere, the metal octopus finally died. Da and Tyler worked the controls frantically to keep them out of the crosshairs of the Reapers on the surface. "So, where do we drop them, Skipper?" Tyler asked. "If I were the bad guys, I'd focus on the capital city, so that's where we're going." Tyler just hoped they would be able to make a dent. Barnaby was running low on ammo, despite her best efforts to conserve it. Her position on the roof of the government build meant that she was the first to see the Bellerophon approach. "What the hell?" she said. "Where did that come from?" The freighter opened a hatch and Krogan started dropping out by the dozens. They immediately began slaughtering husks left and right. Within minutes, the square was cleared out. Barnaby activated her radio. "Chief, you seeing this?" "Yes, I am," Zhukov said, "and I'm not complaining." Neither did Barnaby, but she was well aware that was only a lull in the fight. SSV Ain Jalut. Taylor spotted the hole in the force field and threaded the ship through it. The Reapers realized that they were surrounded by helium-3, so they stopped shooting. Because they knew that if they fired, it would destroy the Ain Jalut, but the helium-3 would take them out as well. Which was why they had stopped blasting, but they didn't stop coming. Ravager kept chasing the Ain Jalut. He was going to end this ship, and then he was going to end the Quarian colonists. Soon, it would pass out the other side of the helium-3 patch, and he would resume firing. Ravager knew the helium-3 was a potential trap. But he had calculated that the human vessel couldn't detonate the pocket without getting caught in the blast herself. The humans wouldn't take that chance. He was still certain of his math when the explosion happened. Zara had to grab one of the consoles to stay on her feet. Alpha had fired a nuclear fission warhead into the helium-3 after Ain Jalut had sent them an order to do so. The Reapers had been right to consider detonating the helium-3 pocket crazy. A regular nuclear bomb wouldn't do the job, but adding a small amount of element 0 had fixed that. Rodriguez had known about the element 0 upgrade because it had been mentioned in the information packet they had gotten from the ghosts before the battle had begun. This left them facing a shockwave that would crush anything it touched. Ain Jalut was fighting not to be on that list. "The shockwave is approaching," Harris said before cursing in Tyrian. "Impact in 10 seconds. Captain," Tyla Farka began, "I'm reading 2 automated beacons." "It'll have to wait. We have an explosion to survive first," Zara said. Ain Jalut, however, had one advantage over the Reapers. They knew where Alpha was beforehand, so had already been headed for the station when the missile entered the pocket of helium-3. She reached the station, which had a single dock. Taylor slipped the Ain Jalut inside and a force field snapped into place 2 seconds before the shockwave rattled all of Alpha. Electrical energy crackled through the frame surrounded the Ain Jalut now, but the ship was fine. Now the question was, how were the Reapers doing? Zara hoped they'd been vaporized. Ravager screamed as he was hit by heat, radiation, and electromagnetic energy. Zarak had been closer than him and was killed by the blast. He had been so focused on destroying the human ship that he had forgotten about the Myanmar, the 3rd Reaper chasing it. Not that it mattered now, because Myanmar was also undone by the blast. As the blast faded, Ravager looked around for his prey. He spotted it, and he spotted it again. Then he realized what was actually happening. Ravager cursed as the 2 human vessels opened fire. Museum of History. Cragg stepped into what was left of the Museum of History. The Krogan force had split into 2 groups. Group Alpha was preparing to defend the square against the next wave, while Group Beta was going on the offensive. They had also delivered ammo to Barnaby's team and set up sniper nests at key locations. "Cragg," a Batarian voice said, "is that you old war dog? Avar, how did you end up here? It's a long story, so it'll have to wait." "I hate to interrupt," Zhukov said, "but we have a mystery to solve." "What mystery?" Cragg asked. Avar explained how the capital city sat on Prothean ruins, and how the museum had one of only 3 entrances. "So, what's so special about these Prothean ruins?" Cragg asked. "What makes them different from all the other Prothean ruins in the galaxy?" "That's the mystery," Zhukov said. "You up for a hunt? Let's go." Zhukov took point, with Avar in the middle and Cragg taking up the rear. Shelter Alpha 8. Harash watched as things changed on the sensor screens. The 3 new arrivals had eliminated one of the Reapers further away from the planet. 2 of them were Asari, and 1 was Tyrian. They moved on to come to the aid of Dreadnought 1, which was still exchanging blows with a Reaper in orbit. At the same time, the freighter had dropped a load of Krogan warriors. It gave him sparks of hope, but the Reapers down on the surface were still wrecking his world and killing his people. Still, maybe that miracle was going to happen. The silence in the room was broken by an alarm. Erin stuck her head out of the door and looked both ways. People were running back and forth all over the place. It was Jan who decided that he was done sitting still. He bolted from the room. "He's going to get into trouble," Olaf said. "Yep," Erin said with a sigh. "Let's go after him." They went after Jan. He was in a chaotic control room, hiding in a small nook behind a large computer server. Erin and Olaf managed to squeeze into the nook as well. Jan signaled for silence so that they could overhear the officials talking. "The Prothean ruins have been breached, sir," one of the officers said. "By who?" His superior officer asked. "A human, a Batarian, and a Krogan. Based on the readings, they are not husks." He paused. "Orders, sir." The senior officer activated his communications device. At the same time, Jan, Erin, and Olaf sneaked out of the control room. Apparently, they weren't the only ones sneaking around. They made it halfway back to their room before everything went horribly wrong. SSV Ain Jalut. McKinley had taken the helm, while Taylor was now behind the scanner console. The frame around the dock had acted like a Faraday cage, protected the ship from the helium-3 explosion. As McKinley backed the ship away from Conversion Platform Alpha, he made a mental note to recommend Taylor for promotion as soon as he could. While he put distance between them and Alpha, Tyla Farka and Mandy Jones were working the communications console in the CIC. "Captain," Farka began. "I've identified those 2 beacons. They're friend or foe markers, Skipper." "Good work, Tyla," Zara said. "What's the database readout?" "It's coming through now, Skipper," Jones said. "Beacon 1 is the SSV Elalamine SR-3, Captain Marcus O'Neill in command." "Good, we can use the help." "Captain O'Neill used to be Commander O'Neill," Jones said. "He was assigned as XO here." "I see." The console beeped again. "Beacon 2 is the SSV Verdun SR-4, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Vale in command." "I thought Henry DeWitt was supposed to command that ship," Harris said. "It does say that he's acting commander," Jones said. "DeWitt must have been killed or reassigned. We'll figure that out later," Zara said. Zara turned her attention back to the displays. Their crazy plan had worked out. 2 of the 3 Reapers that had been chasing them had been taken out, and the 3rd was taking a beating from Elalamine and Verdun. Ain Jallet entered weapons range and joined the attack. Between the 3 of them, the ships took the Reaper down. Then they formed a formation and headed for New Rannoch. Chapter 14. Shelter Alpha 8. Aaron, Olaf, and Jan had made it halfway back to room 17 before they were noticed. 2 of the Quarian guards spotted them as they turned a corner. "I knew it," the sergeant snapped. "They're spies, seize them." "Run," Olaf said. They bolted to room 17 and slammed the door shut behind them before locking it. The guards began pounding on the door. "What is going on?" Hera asked. "We may have sneaked into a control room," Aaron said, "and so maybe they now think we're spies." Hera glared at her. "Yeah, I know sneaking around was stupid, but we were trying to keep Jan out of trouble." "My bad," Jan said. "But what do we do now?" Outside, the sergeant was ordering security to break down the door. Aaron could make out his commands through the door. "We have to get out of here before we end up locked up, surviving on bread and water." "Good thing I've found the air vent," Tom said. Tom had managed to open the vent and provided access to the duct beyond. They grabbed their belongings and climbed into the duct. Aaron went in last. She had barely put the grate back in place when the door broke. Rackle had taken notice of the ruckus in the shelter. He had told Sergeant Kavar to stand down, that the children had simply been bold and curious. In short, they were being children. But the invasion and the insanity taking place on the surface had pushed the man over the edge. While Rackle yelled into the radio, Admiral Harash was giving his own orders. The people that had entered the Prothean ruins had been identified as defenders: Chief Zhukov, Avar, and Battlemaster Varrock Crag. Harash had managed to contact them, and they had explained why they were down in the ruins. So Harash was ordering the defenders not to attack them, but to go back them up. They had figured that if the Reapers made it down to the ruins, all would be lost. So there were only a few soldiers in the ruins. Still, any help he could send was better than none. Several meters below the lowest level of Shelter Alpha 8, Zhukov was following a trial. Bright purple light were leading them towards something. The lights had begun appearing as soon as they had entered the ruins. They weren't the only thing that was different. Force field blocked passages, doors were closed and locked, and automatic turrets were ready to fire. "This whole place is ready for a last stand," Crag said. "I'm just glad it's not shooting at us." Avar said. They reached the end of the trail, which was an elevator. Zhukov pressed the button, and the platform raced down. SSV Ain Jallet. Mandy Jones was talking to her counterpart on the Elalamine, a comm operations chief called Ayers. Her instinct were telling her that this was the captain's brother, but she had a job to do. So she didn't ask. Next to her, Farka was dealing with a serviceman who was on the edge of hyperventilating. Harris appeared next to Farka without a sound. "Sorry, once a Marine, always a Marine," he said with a smile. "How are we doing here?" Farka typed something into an electronic pad, which she handed to Harris. He read the text, which said, "Jones had gotten the hang of it, she's doing fine." Her counterpart on the Verdun is about to have a full-blown nervous breakdown. Needs to be relieved ASAP. Harris only nodded and passed the pad on to Ayers. Like him, she only nodded in reply. Because of now, they had bigger issues. They had eliminated all the Reapers in space, but things were far from going well. Dreadnought 2 had been severely damaged and was being evacuated, and the Reapers down on the surface were doing major damage. All the scout ships had been shot down and husks were swarming all over the surface. "What about the Bellerophon?" Rodriguez asked. "Crashed. Looks like she survived the trip down but didn't make it back into orbit," Harris said. "Find the Reaper closest to Zhukov's position and start shooting at it," Ayers said. "Aye, Skipper," Rodriguez and Harris said in unison. Seconds later, Ain Jallet dove into the atmosphere. Street, New Rannoch. Harry Tyler put 3 rounds into the nearest husk and signaled all clear with his left hand. Bellerophon had tried to climb back into orbit, but the Reapers knew that they had dropped Cragg and his fellow Krogan, and they were not taking it well, so they had shot the freighter down. Da had broken her arm in the crash, but nobody had been killed. With Da's injury, Tyler had taken charge. "I can see why he's such a respected captain," Da said as Maria Henderson treated her arm. "He hasn't flinched even once since this whole mess started." They were in what was left of a bank. Tyler was preparing for a push towards the area secured by the Krogan. Henderson had been the ship's doctor of the MSV Endeavour before she was destroyed. The Tylers have been fighters since the American War of Independence. Harry's survived scrapes with pirates and mercenaries. "Okay, folks," Tyler began. "Here's the plan. We have 3 assault rifles. Those will be our tips of the spear. Pistols will go next, and our snipers will take up the rear and provide cover fire. Let's go." Somebody handed Da a pistol as Henderson finished putting her arms in a sling. She just hoped that they would have enough ammo to make it. Chapter 15. SSV Ain Jallet. Ain Jallet and her sister were hitting the Reaper with everything they had. The massive creature returned fire, but the ship dodged the laser beam. "We're doing plenty of damage, but the blasted thing is still walking," Rodriguez said. "How are we doing on Javelin missiles?" Zara asked. "Our supply is spent. Ella Lamine and Verdun used all of theirs to take out the one damaged one by the Helium-3 blast. Sanders, can we spent people to drive the Mako?" Zara said into the intercom. "I can give Mbeki and Kepler, but where do you want to drop it?" Zara checked the scanners and spotted the perfect place to give the Reaper a nasty surprise. The Bellerophon crew had gotten stuck at a crossroads. It was swarming with husks, and while their coordinated fire was enough to keep the enemy at bay, it was not enough to break through. Then an Alliance ship came sweeping down. It was clear a frigate, but not a design that Da had ever seen before. The important part was that it opened a cargo bay door and a M35 Mako came roaring out. It didn't waste any time, riddling husks with bullets and cannon fire on the way down. Before the enemy realized what hit them, a second ship passed over and dropped another Mako. Between them, the 2 tanks put a serious dent in the enemy's numbers. "Grenades," Tyler ordered, "before they regroup." 8 grenades detonated and everybody opened fire. It was now or never. "Vale, we need your Mako down there," Zara said into the communications console. "Agreed, but I've got a skeleton crew, so no driver and gunner." "Just drop it. She can take the fall," Rodriguez said. "If Da's still alive, she'll take care of the rest. Will do." Verdun dove towards the site. Then she put her nose down and opened the cargo bay door. Gravity did the rest. The Mako tumbled end over end until 7 husks and the ground stopped her. "If they hadn't been zombified, that really would have hurt," Tyler said at the sight of the 3rd Mako. "Think it'll still drive? It's a Mako. It's literally designed to be dropped from orbit and still drive." Da said. Tyler grinned at that. The Mako had landed on its wheels, so he quickly found the entrance hatch and opened it. A minute later, the tank drove out of the crater she'd left in the street. Da began giving orders. They needed to go. Prothean ruins. The elevator had delivered them to the lowest level of the ruins. Besides the elevator, the level only had one other room. Said room was sealed behind a heavy door. The Quarians had been able to open it. Zhukov, Avar, and Crag had just secured the lobby when 8 Quarians joined them. "Oh, good," Crag said. "At least we won't walk into whatever death trap is beyond that door alone." "We have to open the door first," Avar said. "Any ideas?" "We tried everything," one of the Quarians said. "Let's start with the basics," Zhukov said. He approached the door and it began to move. And then it jammed. He crouched and saw that the room beyond was covered in roots and vines. The space under the door was too narrow for him to crawl through. They were stuck. They had made it back to the sewers and from there into the Prothean ruins. Erin had to admit they were really creepy, but they were big and she figured nobody would look for them down here. "Why are we following these blue lights?" Lexa asked. "Do you want to go into the dark part of these ruins?" Olaf asked. "Good point," Lexa said, "but if we get eaten by something horrible, it's totally your fault." The lights led to an air duct that appeared to go straight to the bottom of the ruins. Lexa swallowed. "I knew it. I've seen this movie. This is the part where we fall straight into the stomach of the monster and melt. That was a horrible movie," Jan said. "The script was corny and the effects were terrible." He climbed into the air duct. "I'll go first and prove it's totally safe. Cannonball." Jan pushed off and vanished down the vent. Zhukov heard something land with a thud beyond the door. Then a young voice yelled up an air vent. "It's safe. Nothing but vines and roots." More thuds sounded on the other side of the door. Zhukov waited until they stopped before speaking up. "Who's there?" he asked, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "Corporal Zhukov, is that you?" Olaf said. "It's us, Erin and Olaf." "Yes, how'd you kids get down here?" "It's a long story," Olaf began. "Can you help us open the door? It's jammed." He took out a flashlight and rolled it under the door. "Can you see what's wrong with it?" Olaf picked up the flashlight and turned it on. He spotted a big root and figured it was the problem, so he told Zhukov about it. "Can you break it?" "No," Olaf said. "It's too thick." Crag took out a large combat knife and slid it under the door. Erin swallowed, but picked it up and began hacking at the root. Olaf used the flashlight to allow her to see. It broke after the 5th chop, so they grabbed the root and pulled. It took all 8 of them, but a chunk of the root finally came out. The door didn't open all the way, but it came up far enough for Zhukov and his team to crawl under the door. "We should send them back to the surface," Avar said. "No, something tells me it's no coincidence they're here," Zhukov said. "Let's go, kids." Erin gave the knife back to Crag, while Avar gave her a flashlight. The soldiers all turned on the flashlight on their weapons. "Why are you carrying flashlights when you have them on your guns?" Carol asked. "They're spares," Avar began, "in case the other break or run out of power." They headed deeper into the room. It was a massive room full of stone columns, and then the displays began to light up. Dreadnought 1. Being Batarian, Kaimas had never believed in miracles. Until now, he actually hugged Aram. The Salarian was stunned at first, but then returned the action. Dreadnought 1 was a mess. Her hull was breached, most her weapons were offline, and the crew was fighting fires all over the place. Dreadnought 2, however, was in even worse shape. And Captain Romer III was still alive, whereas Dreadnought 2 had lost her captain. Kaimas was overseeing the chaos that was Dreadnought 1's hangar bay. Well, until he had spotted Aram. He finally let go of his XO. "Did all the survivors make it off too?" Kaimas asked. "No, 3 chose to stay." Kaimas was about to ask why he saw the answer. The hangar door was open and he could see Dreadnought 2, including its burning engines. Kaimas felt his stomach drop as he realized what Dreadnought 2 was doing. He just hoped that the Reapers wouldn't see them coming. SSV Ain Jalat. Zara saw Dreadnought 2 enter the atmosphere and yelled an order to get clear into the communications console. The ship turned red hot as it headed for the surface at full speed. "It's a kamikaze run," Farka said. "I know," Zara said, and the hell arrived. Dreadnought 2 hit the Reaper she had targeted and her drive core breached. Buildings vaporized, air was heated to millions of degrees. plasma pushed outwards as radiation levels spiked. When the light faded and the dust began to settle, the Reaper was still standing. Farka gasped. Bloody hell. She began, before the Reaper keeled over. The Reaper's kinetic barriers and metal skin had protected it from the heat and physical damage. But the electromagnetic burst had fried its nervous system. The Reaper that Ain Jalet had been attacking had been outside the blast radius. But then something happened that the Reaper and the crew of the Ain Jalet didn't expect. The Reaper that had toppled over had fallen next to a power plant. Zara didn't waste any time and opened a channel to the plant. A nervous plant manager appeared on her screen. The man had insisted on staying at his plant with a skeleton crew. "Manager Lavar, can you power that Reaper laser up? We'll be lucky to get one shot, maybe two, and I can't promise we'll hit anything. Let us worry about that. Ain Jalet out." Farka had seen this crew beat the odds before, and she got the feeling that they were already cooking up a plan to do so again. Chapter 16. Prothean's Ruins. The displays were holographic and in Prothean. Finally, the image of an alien appeared in the middle of the room. It was unlike any alien any of them had ever seen, but they could all understand it somehow. "I am Valiant, a Prothean VI based on Herrick Tikkar, the overseer of Project Capsule. Do you wish to trigger the Omega defense protocols?" "That sounds dramatic," Aaron said. "I vote for no." "Smart kid," Crag said. "I'm with her." "What are the Omega defense protocols?" Avar asked. "There are 3 protocols available." The room lit up as Valiant showed them what they were. Up on the surface, Regina Mbeki and David Kepler had just received order for Captain Ayer's newest crazy plan. They had managed to cram all of the Bellerophon crew into the 3 Makos, except the snipers. Those 2 crew members had insisted on staying out anyway. Traveling over the rooftops, they had found a shelter where the defenders could use reinforcements, so they had set up a nest and begun killing husks. The Makos had reached the Museum of History, leaving behind a trail of enemy corpses. "You know this plan is crazy?" Da asked. There were 5 people in Ain Jalet's Mako, which Kepler had nicknamed Bob. Bob was currently holding Mbeki, Kepler, Da, Barnaby, and Tyler. Barnaby smiled at Da. "Crazy plans are our specialty. Captain Ayers has put together an 8 team, except in space," Barnaby said. "And she loves it when a plan comes together," Kepler added. "Fine," Da said. "So how do we pull this off? Barnaby, you're with us. Da, you take charge of the defense here and make life miserable for the husks here." Mbeki said. "And me?" Tyler asked. "Find 3 volunteers and take the other 2 Makos to make a ruckus at that shelter the snipers found," Kepler said. "That should keep them distracted while we make our move." Da and Tyler got out of the Mako, while Mbeki planned their route to the power plant. Zhukov didn't believe what he had just heard. Before entering an ice age, the one that the Quarians had ended New Rannoch had been a Thoihan colony. The Thoihan had begun work on advanced defenses, which the Protheans had continued. But when the Reapers had attacked during the last cycle, they had been offline. The Quarians, however, had provided Valiant with the means to complete them. "So, what do we do now?" Avar asked. Zhukov turned towards the controls and began pushing buttons. SSV Ain Jalet. Rick McKinley had just swung them around for another pass at their target when it was encompassed in a bright green light. The Reaper was lifted off the ground. "It's a gravity well," Taylor said. "No, it's an anti-gravity well." The Reaper struggled, but kept accelerating. Taylor plotted its course and realized where it was going. "It's headed straight for the sun, Lieutenant." "Good, one less to worry about." There was the question of where the anti-gravity well had come from, but that was an issue for the captain and XO to deal with. McKinley had other things to worry about. Zara watched as Ain Jalet found a new target and swung around to attack it. Ella Lamine and Verdun followed her and hit the same Reaper. "What the hell just happened?" Harris asked. "Harash doesn't seem like the type to hold out on us, and the energy signature isn't Quarian either," Rodriguez said. "Try running it against Prothean energy signatures." Rodriguez worked his console and got back results that made him frown. No match. he began, but the well came from the Prothean ruins. What if they're not all Prothean? Mandy Jones said, getting her looks. Well, who says the Protheans started from zero? We build stuff on top of their ruins. But if it's a cycle like Commander Shepard said, then some of the Prothean ruins would have to build things left behind by older civilizations, Harris said, which we wouldn't have records on, Rodriguez said. And thus the energy signature comes back as unknown. Good thinking, Lieutenant, Zara said. She just hoped that whoever had been here before the Protheans had more tricks up their sleeve. The Reaper screamed as it fell into the new Rannoch star. They had known about the Thoihan colony and the defenses they had been building. But they had presumed those defenses destroyed after wiping out the Thoihan, until they discovered the Quarian colony. The Quarians had managed to finish the Prothean defenses, which highlighted the risk of them completing the Thoihan systems as well. Hence, the heavy attacks against the Prothean ruin access points, attacks that had failed. The Reaper's last thought was that these blasted creatures were only buying themselves time. He might not be around to see it, but they would win. Makos. Mbeki pushed the Mako to her top speed, while Kepler put the tank's machine gun to good use. Almost there, Barnaby said. Check in on the other Makos, Barnaby, Mbeki said. Alpha to Bravo, Barnaby said as she activated her radio. Status report, Tyler. Bravo and Charlie moving together. On schedule and slaughtering husks like there's no tomorrow. Good. Keep it up, Alpha out. They reached the power plant, where the Quarians had finished wiring up the Reaper, which left them facing a possible new threat. From what Commander Shepard had reported, Reapers could brainwash people. The process was called indoctrination, and there were reports that the Reaper being dead wasn't enough to stop it. The good news was that it took time, so if they move fast, they could make their move before it became a factor. Mbeki parked the Mako, and they got to work. Henry Smith had been the MSV Endeavour's security officer until the ship had been destroyed by the Reapers. Now, he was acting as gunner for Harry Tyler's Mako. Smith had been aboard the Endeavour for 8 years. Before that, he had spent 15 years as an Alliance Marine. So figuring out the Mako's gun had been easy. We're approaching Navigation Marker 3, Skipper. Good, we get through there and it's a straight shot to the shelter. Navigation Marker 3 was a small square where 3 streets met, and it was swarming with husks. Time to get to work. Smith said. Both Makos opened fire. Chapter 17. Prothean Ruins. Did you just launch a Reaper into the sun? Aaron asked. They were still in the Prothean control room, but something had changed. Zhukov was working the controls, while Cragg and the rest of the adults had set up a perimeter to defend the entrance. The children all had flashlights and knives, which they were using to attack the roots and vines all over the room. Yes, we did, and the Reapers aren't going to like that, Avar said. Zhukov cursed in Russian as he tried to fire the well weapon again. I just tried to do it again. But the system says there's not enough power. It appears the power source is a series of special power cells. Problem is, I can't transfer the power from the cells to the well projector. I think I've found it, Carol began. There's a big conduit under the floor here. If it's that important, I'd run it through here. Aaron and Olaf joined Carol and looked at the section of floor. It was a grate, allowing them to see that the conduit was badly overgrown, but they sounded wrong somehow. We're getting visitors, Avar said. Olaf and Aaron grabbed the grate and tried to lift it, but it was too heavy. The other children rushed forward and joined in. There was a hard crack as the grate opened. We're in, Olaf yelled. The problem was, he got the feeling that the bad guys were too. On the surface, Da and the defenders at the Museum of History had been holding the line. And then the enemy stopped coming, which Da knew was a bad thing, so she had made her way to the museum's roof. What she saw made her curse. Delta to Alpha, we have a problem. I read you, Barnaby said over the radio. What's wrong? We were holding the line, and apparently so were the Quarians, because our Reaper friends just blasted their way in. Roger that. Barnaby out. Da just hoped they would be able to execute the plan before the Reapers executed them. Several streets over, Henry Smith shot the last husk. They were through the square. Tyler pushed the gas pedal all the way down and they bolted for the shelter. Smith signaled the good news to Daw and Barnaby. In return, Daw told them about the Reapers breaching the ruins. He cursed, just as the Makos arrived at the shelter. There had been 12 defenders, but now they were down to 3. Tyler parked their Mako to the left, while the other Mako parked to right. Now, it was Tyler's turn to come up with a plan to hold the line. SSV Ain Jalat. Zara activated the radio and the intercom at the same time. Daw had told them about the breach of the ruins. We need to focus on the Reaper that made the breach. Dreadnought 1 is in position to lay down fire, Kaimas said. And we're on approach, Captain, McKinley said. Elalamine has your back, O'Neill said. And so does Verdun, Vale began. How are we doing on Plan B? Almost done. All we need now is a target. As if on cue, the radio came to life. It was Maria Barnaby. Plan B is ready for action, Captain, firing in 10 seconds. As promised, the downed Reaper fired a shot and hit one of the other Reapers. It managed to fire another shot, then there was an explosion. Zara cursed under her breath, then activated her radio. Report, Barnaby, are you still with us? Yes, ma'am. But the Reaper apparently had safeties against Plan B. Checking the sensors, Zara saw that both shots had hit the mark. The Reaper that had made the breach was 2 tentacles lighter. It fell over. McKinley, tell me you saw that, Rodriguez said into the intercom. Yes, I did. Lining us up for an attack run now, Commander. Good, Zara said. Hit it with everything we've got. Ain Jalat swung around and cut loose with all weapons she had, with Elalamine and Verdun following. As promised, Dreadnought 1 provided cover fire from orbit. Zara just hoped that whoever was in the ruins pushing buttons would be able to hold off the husks long enough to survive this mess. Down in engineering, Claudia Sanders was studying the sensor readings on the anti-gravity well. Something about the energy signature was off, but she couldn't put her fingers on what. Come on, Claudia, what is missing from this picture? She worked the controls to separate the elements of the signature. Then she rotated one of the elements, and it clicked together in her brain. The system was far from functional, and she got the feeling that it was more than just a simple catapult. Claudia worked the controls again, and then the sensors detected something they had not been able to see before. And what she saw now made her suspect that things were about to get very interesting down on the surface. Museum of History. Daw heard a shout from one of the other defenders. She made her way to the museum entrance. Another wave of husks was incoming, and it was big. Clearly, Zhukov and Avar had hit an even bigger nerve than Daw had thought. Wait for it, she ordered. Make sure your shots kill something. They waited until the husks were within range and then unleashed a hail of bullets. Dozens of husks went down, but they kept coming. Daw cursed, but everybody kept shooting. Grenades, Daw yelled. Cover people. 10 grenades went flying and the wave was thinned out again. And then it was completely wiped out. Daw blinked and then looked up. What she saw made her smile. Prothean ruins. Zhukov, Avar, and Crag opened fire as soon as the first husks appeared. Down in the space under the floor, Aaron and the children were pulling roots like they were slaying a monster. Olaf put his hand on her shoulder. I'm scared, Olaf, she said. I'm really, really scared. Me too, Olaf began. But whatever happens, we're together. Guys, Carol said, I found something you need to see. Aaron and Olaf joined Carol. He had found a large nodule that was blocking what appeared to be a junction of some sort. We clear that and something will happen. Olaf said. They began chopping at it. Chapter 18. Bravo and Charlie. Tyler and Smith could hear the husks coming before they saw them. The Verdun's Mako, Charlie, had been manned by 2 other Endeavour crew members. Paul Anders had been the chief engineer and Roger Vander had been one of Smith's security officers. Anders, Vander, get ready to put those guns to good use, Tyler said. Ready for action, Vander said. We'll put them full of lead when you give the word. Anders was in Bravo while Vander was in Charlie. Both were manning their Mako's machine guns, but Tyler knew it wasn't enough. even with 5 defenders and 2 snipers, so he would have get creative. "Come on, Harry, time to use that brain of yours," Smith said. Tyler looked at the street. The husks began to pour in and they opened fire. Then Tyler made his move. The street was a straight line towards their position. But it was far from level. The defenders were higher than the attackers, and that was what gave Tyler his move. Between them and the attackers were 2 fire hydrants. Tyler bolted and opened the first hydrant, causing a torrent of water. Several husks lost their footing, and Tyler followed it up with a frag grenade. The explosion bought him the time he needed to reach the second hydrant. He opened it, and more water flooded down the street. Anders, Vander, time to use the mortar setting. Besides working as machine guns, the turrets on the Makos also had a mortar setting. Both Makos fired a single mortar shot, but not at the husks. Instead, they targeted a pair of electrical cables above. The cables snapped and physics did the rest. First, the cables came down. Second, the electricity arched, and the husks began falling. Prothean ruins. The nodule broke at last. As soon as it did, the children jumped away from the conduit. Aaron and Olaf put the grate back in place. "The conduit is beginning to glow," Aaron yelled. There were beeps and the holographic displays began to change, but the biggest effect was what happened at the entrance. The husks turned and bolted. "This is either really good," Avar said, "or extremely bad," Crag said. "Like the end of the world bad." Avar and Crag stayed at the entrance while Zhukov went to the controls. He began pushing buttons as he had before. Up on the surface, all the remaining Reapers were caught in anti-gravity wells, and that was not everything. All this time, the 2 Asari cruiser and the Turian ship had been exchanging fire with the last Reaper left in orbit. But the Reaper suddenly turned and bolted. Captain Rhea Hpar of the Asari cruiser Pyres wanted to chase it. She knew it was not really retreating. It was going summon a 3rd wave. But she also knew that if they picked this fight alone, they would lose. Not to mention that they had plenty of wounded and repairs to make. Which was her trying to keep the worst part at bay. They had lost good people, and this war was just getting started. Zhukov couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Reapers were gone, but he knew it was only a matter of time before more showed up, and the planet was still swarming with husks. "Defense system Omega-2 is now available in Bravo mode," Valiant said. "Warning, engaging Omega-2 in Alpha mode will also engage Defense Protocol Omega-1. The hologram paused as an image appeared next to the controls. "The Omega-1 countdown timer is currently set to 15 minutes. Erin gasped when she saw the new image. "Is that what I think it is?" she said. "I think so," Olaf said. "At least if you're thinking what I think you're thinking." "Let's see what Omega-2 does first," Zhukov said. He pressed the buttons to trigger Omega-2. SSV Ain Jalat. Zara watched as the Reapers vanished into the sun. Except for the one that was retreating. It was Harris who said what she was thinking. "You know they're going to be back, right?" he said. "I know, but we can't chase it down. We have husks to deal with." Before Harris could answer, several of the monitor around CIC lit up. "What the hell?" Rodriguez said. "These readings are off the charts. Is it the same energy signature as before?" "Yes, Skipper, but it's not the same system or subsystem, ma'am." Rodriguez pressed several buttons, and an image of the planet's sky appeared. It was as if there was a meteor storm in progress, and then she realized what the system was doing. "It's a teleporter," Zara said. "It's grabbing husks and beaming them to the edge of the atmosphere." "And gravity does the rest," Harris said. "These things are tough, but they can't survive re-entry." Sanders to Ayers. The intercom said, "Can you come down to engineering?" "No, but I can send Singer. Please do. There's something he needs to see." Rodriguez left CIC. Zara got the feeling that Sanders had found something interesting, but she had her hands full. Sanders looked up from her console when Rodriguez entered. "What have you got, Commander?" he said. "I've analyzed the energy patterns of the unknown energy down there, and from what I've seen, we've only seen half of what's down there in action, sir." "Based on what?" "Well, The power come from cells that are charged by geothermal vents deep inside the planet's crust, sir. She punched up a map of the planet. It showed green lines representing power conduits and clusters of blue squares, which were the power cells. The conduits seemed to meet at the capital. I did the math, and those cells are holding a lot more power than what's been used so far. Maybe they were just building in redundancy. I've factored that in, sir. Otherwise, this grid would be even more overkill. My best guess is that there are at least 2 more surprise down there. Anything else? No, Commander. Rodriguez walked out of engineering. His instinct were telling him that the Reapers weren't going to like these surprises one bit. Bravo and Charlie. The electricity finally stopped arching. Tyler figured that a safety had tripped somewhere, but his scheme had worked. Dozens of husks had been killed. He was about to activate his radio when what looked an awful lot like teleporter energy started snatching up enemy soldiers. Tyler waited until the last one was gone, then went to close the 2 hydrants. He had just closed the second hydrant when Ain Jalet's Mako came up the street. Mbeki and Kepler climbed out first, followed by Barnaby. Nice work, Mbeki said. Looks like it over now. Emphasis on the for now. Barnaby said. Tyler thought Barnaby was right about that, but he didn't have time to get philosophical about it. They had work to do. Chapter 19. SSV Verdun. Verdun's briefing room was crammed to the brim. Zara was there to represent Ain Jalet. O'Neill had come over from El Alamein, and Vale had handed his CIC over to Eric Kepler. Zara was sitting between her brother Red and Kaimas. Admiral Harash represented the colonists. Finally, Captain Rhea Hpar was the ranking Asari, and Captain Diane Kavar commanded the sole Turian ship in the mix. Harash had just finished briefing everybody on the Thoihan defenses when the intercom activated. Captain Vale, Kepler began. The last husks were just teleported, sir. We double-checked, sir. They're all gone. Good, Vale said. Any word from the Tavura? The Tavura was the other Asari cruiser. She was sitting farther out from the star to serve as an early warning system. No, sir. No sign of the 3rd wave yet. Keep an eye on it, Vale out. He turned to Harash. You were saying, Admiral, we've secured the breach into the ruins. We're setting up defenses at the Museum of History and in the corridors leading to the control room. Repairs to Dreadnought 1 are underway, and we're salvaging as many of the AA guns as we can. What about the Krogan? O'Neill asked. They've taken over the defensive position that Captain Tyler rescued. The rest are helping with the defense of the museum. What about your people, Captain Kaimas? Vale asked. I'm taking everybody down to the surface to help with the defense. All of the wounded have been transferred to a secure hospital in one of the underground shelters. We're going to make sure it stays secure. Vale nodded. He knew that Kaima's old boss, Area T-Loke, wasn't very forgiving, so he understood why Kaimas and his people weren't going home. Before the debriefing could continue, an alarm sounded. SSV El Alamein. Jill Daw was back in uniform. Using an emergency war regulation, O'Neill had reactivated Daw and drafted her as El Alamein's XO. His previous XO, Staff Lieutenant Andrea Haley, had done an excellent job, but Verdun was light on crew, including not having a navigator. So Daw was taking over as El Alamein's XO so that Haley could fill the navigator position on Verdun. Daw entered El Alamein's CIC and activated the intercom. Like on Verdun, an alarm had sounded. What's going on, Smooth? Oscar Taylor had come over from Ain Jalet to become El Alamein's senior pilot. The only other crew change was that 2 ex-Bellerophon crew had volunteered to help Dr. Mulrooney in the infirmary. Word from the Tavura, Commander. We have 12 Reapers on approach and 3 hours before they get here. Daw cursed under her breath. 3 hours was not enough time. It looked like they were about to make their last stand. SSV Verdun. Verdun's CIC was buzzing with activity. Kepler and Haley were overseeing things. Tyla Farka had volunteered to take over running communications, and Vale had accepted. And she was not the only volunteer aboard. Harry Tyler and the remaining 18 Bellerophon survivors were now part of the crew. "Where's Tyler?" Vale asked Kepler. "He and Mr. Smith are taking care of things in engineering, sir." "Good." He turned to Farka. "We need to get everybody back to their posts." "I'm already making the necessary calls, Captain." Vale nodded and left her to it. Zara winked at Farka. Her instinct told her that Verdun was in good hands, which meant she could focus on the Ain Jalet. She knew that their chances of surviving the new wave of Reapers were not good, but she had no intention of going down without a fight. What bothered her was New Rannoch. Everybody aboard the ships who wore a uniform had known that they might be asked to sacrifice themselves when they put it on. And the civilian volunteers, including Kaima's people, all knew the score as well. But the planet's population, they hadn't signed up for this. The colonists were the people they were fighting for, and if they lost, all those people would be at the Reaper's mercy, which Zara was certain these blasted space octopuses didn't have. She thought about Aaron and Olaf and was glad they weren't up here. Museum of History. Aaron and Olaf were sitting on a bench and watching as people were preparing the museum for another assault by the Reaper zombie soldiers. Somebody had finally talked Sergeant Kavar out of his insanity, so at least they didn't have to worry about being arrested. "They're coming back, aren't they?" Aaron asked. "Yes, and the chances of good guys winning aren't good. Unless they use the Omega defense." Aaron paused. "But you saw what those do. Their name translated to the last letter of the Greek alphabet for a reason. You think they're that desperate?" Aaron gave him a look. "Yeah, I think so too." He got to his feet and took Aaron's hand. In the chaos, it wasn't hard for them to enter the ruins. They made their way to the control room. A team was pulling roots and vines all over the place. Admiral Harash and Vice Admiral Rackle were studying the main control interface with Valiant's holographic form watching. "Aaron, Olaf, what are you doing here?" Harash asked. "We heard things," Aaron said, "and we know about the Omega defenses. Mr. Valiant showed us blueprints and numbers." "You want to know if we're going to use them?" Harash asked. "Imagine we swapped places, wouldn't you want to know?" Olaf asked. "It's a fair question," Rackle said. "And a difficult decision. Whatever you decide, you've got my support." Harash looked at the controls and pondered. The weight of the world was on his shoulders. He took a deep breath and made his decision. Chapter 20. SSV Ain Jalet. Zara entered CIC to find Rodriguez and Harris getting the ship ready for the next round of fighting. "Commander, Lieutenant, how are we doing?" she asked. "We're on schedule, Skipper," Rodriguez said. "And the Tavura is on her way back at maximum speed. She will be here in 30 minutes. "So why is it taking the Reapers a couple of hours?" "They don't know if we have more Thoihan surprises up our sleeve," Harris said. "So they're taking it slow, playing it safe." "Good thinking." Zara made her way to the galactic map. "Now we have to." That was when the light of a teleporter beam lit up the space. When it faded, Aaron and Olaf McKinley were standing in CIC. More teleporter beams followed. Hera, Lexa, Jan, Bart, Carol, and Tom were now in CIC as well. It was Rodriguez who spoke up first. "Aaron, Olaf, what's going on?" he asked. Admiral Harash activated the Omega-2 protocol, but he put it in alpha mode, but he reprogrammed it first. Aaron said. The Prothean VI scanned the ships in orbit and calculated how much people their life support could handle. More children were deposited by teleporter. It figured more kids would fit than adults. "Okay, I'm afraid to ask," Harris began, "but what does Omega-1 do?" Aaron made a face. "I wasn't at the briefing." "I don't think that saying it here is a good idea," Aaron said. "Rodriguez, you have the deck." "Lieutenant, Aaron, and Olaf, we need to talk in the briefing room." Zara led the way to the briefing room. As soon as they were inside, Aaron took a deep breath. "It's a cannon. Omega-1 is a really big cannon," she said. "The actual device is in a pocket universe near the star. When the clock hits 0, the device will phase back into the main universe and start draining power from the sun." "That's impossible," Harris said. "Phasing technology is only theoretical. According to the Prothean VI, there was an anomaly here, which the Thoihan modified with their own technology. That's why they picked this solar system to begin with," Olaf said. "So what exactly does this cannon fire?" New Rannoch. Aaron and Olaf said in unison. That why you didn't want to say it in CIC, it's a relocation engine. And there's no guarantee that it'll work, Zara said. The planet might not survive the trip. That's another reason they're relocating the children. They want to make sure that part of their culture survives. And even if it does work, they'll lose their friends, their homes, and their families. Olaf said. Plus, because this technology is ancient, Harris began, there's no way to predict how it will work and where the planet will end up. Question is, will it fire before the Reapers get here? Zara asked. She led the way back into CIC. It was time to go get some answers. 10 minutes later, Rodriguez was running scans. At the same time, Harris was overseeing getting the children settled. Zara was standing next to him and running scenarios in her head. Around them, CIC was buzzing as people continued doing their jobs. I've found the pocket universe. So what the plan? Rodriguez said. It depends on the math. We know it's going to draw power from the star, but how much? New Rannoch is a planet. To move it a signification distance, you would have to drain the whole thing. The math says the star will go supernova. And that's the best case scenario. Sounds like I've got to have a conversation with the other captains. Zara headed back to the briefing room. SSV Elalamine. Marcus O'Neill listed as Zara Ayers explained what was happening. Like Ain Jalat, Elalamine had received a load of children by teleporter. It was Vale who asked what O'Neill was thinking. So, what's the plan? He asked. We wait until the Tavura gets here and is fully loaded. Ayers said. And then we bolt. We have to get these children out of harm's way. Marcus looked at the other captains. He was in his quarters, teleconferencing with the other captains. You know the admirals won't be happy that we lost access to the Thoihan technology, O'Neill said. Nothing we can do about it, Ayers said. I know, but somebody had to say it for the record. What about Dreadnought 1? This is your world, Captain Romer. Admiral Harash has already given us orders to leave with you. What are the chances of this working? Captain Rhea Hpar asked. We've crunched the numbers. About 60% in favor of the planet making it through. The largest question is not if the planet will survive the ride, but where it will end up. If it end up in a deadly enough environment. Ayers didn't have to finish the sentence, because they all knew that if New Rannoch ended up in the wrong place, it would be a death sentence. What about the rest of the Epsilon Nebula when this happens? Diane Cover said. How will it be affected? We don't know, Ayers said. We don't know if the Omega defenses and systems maintaining the shell are connected. The Turian captain nodded. It was O'Neill who made the final choice. Okay, retreat and evacuation it is. The link closed and Marcus headed back to the CIC. They would have get past the approaching Reapers. And it was not going to be easy. SSV Ain Jalat. They had 2 hours before the Reapers arrived. All the surviving ships were loaded to capacity and gathered in orbit. The Omega-1 device had phased into existence a little over 30 seconds ago. Look at that, Rodriguez gasped next to Zara. They were in CIC, watching the telemetry. The Omega-1 device was 3 enormous rings that were connected by spokes. It was sucking energy from the star like a sponge soaking up water. How long until the device is charged? Zara asked. 91 minutes and 42 seconds, Harris said. Position of our Reaper visitors. One of the displays changed to show a map of the system. A red dot represented the Reaper formation. Let's get this over with, Zara said. Singer, give the order. Aye, Skipper, Rodriguez said. All units, execute Plan Alpha. The fleet broke orbit and went into FTL. Aaron and Olaf were sitting in the infirmary. The Quarian children were also there. Dr. Telos was giving them all a checkup. You know she's just trying to distract us, Jan asked. I know, Olaf said, but she's kind and means well, and she's a good doctor. That was when they felt the ship move into FTL. It wasn't a dramatic move, but they could feel the room tilt and then a slight jolt of acceleration. How are we getting past those incoming Reapers? Jan asked. I don't know. But I'm worried that they'll see the cannon and fly faster to attack it before it can fire. Or worse, they could turn around and fly away to attack some other planet. Jan nodded. He wasn't a soldier and he didn't understand war, but he knew that Olaf was right. Then Telos finished her examination of the children. "You know what?" Telos said. "Let's ask the captain." "We can't just ask her," Aaron said. "She's busy running the ship, and she has a battle to think about. Don't worry, us doctors are good at getting answers out of captains." Telos walked to her desk and opened a channel to the CIC. Rodriguez had answered the call from the infirmary. He had muted the link and given Zara a look. "They're fair questions," he said. "And it's fair for the children to ask them. If I was them, I'd be terrified, Skipper." "Yeah, they are about to lose everything. Somebody has to give them some answers." Zara unmuted the channel. "I'll be right down, Dr. Rodriguez. You have the deck. It's going to be a while. Call me when we get close." "Aye, Skipper." Zara headed for the infirmary. She knew that Admiral Hackett would have things to say about her leaving CIC just before a battle. But the fact was that she dealt with a ship full of terrified children, so she had a conversation to have. Chapter 21. Telos listened as Captain Ayers explained what was happening to the children. She calmly answered their questions. The Reapers can't reach the Omega-1 device before it fires. Even their maximum speed is simply too slow. They would have to use their FTL drives, which would be really dangerous. Because as the device sucks power from the star, it causes the gravity to go wobbly. "Isn't that dangerous to us?" Carol asked. "Good question. But we are flying away from the star. The Reapers would have to fly towards it." "But won't the star go supernova if the cannon drains it?" Lexa asked. "Yes, it will. But the explosion will only move at the speed of light and we are already far away, so it won't be able to catch up with us. You are safe here." "So why don't the Reapers turn around?" Hera asked. "Because we know what the device does," Olaf said. "But they don't. And the only way to figure it out is to zombify somebody who does know what's about to happen. Which means that as long as escape and they don't invade before the clock hits 0, Aaron said. "Boom," Bart said, while making a gesture with his hands. "Goodbye, Reapers." "But where will New Rannoch end up after the cannon fires?" "We don't know," Ayers said. "Because this cannon is really old, we have no idea how efficient it is going to be." The room went silent as the children processed that information. Up in SIC, Rodriguez was doing the math. When they were still in orbit, there had been 2 hours between them and the Reapers. But now they were moving towards the enemy. 12 Reapers and 8 troop transports. The numbers Rodriguez got in his head weren't good. "Come on, Singer, keep your cool." He said if the Reapers had one major flaw, it was arrogance. So he hoped that they would be able to use that. 3 Normandy-class frigates, 2 Asari cruisers, 1 Turian cruiser, and the Ghost dreadnought. It would have to do. "Lieutenant, how are we doing?" "The heat sinks are empty." Harris said, "Lasers are fully charged." "Good. Is the formation holding together?" "All 7 ships are on schedule. So you planning on rescuing the skipper for those children anytime soon?" "1 more diagnostics on the engines," he said with a snicker. "And then I'll rescue Zara from those children." "1 diagnostic coming up, sir," Harris said. 12 seconds later, the diagnostic came back. It was all clear. Rodriguez activated the intercom and made the call. The clock finally reached 5 minutes. Everybody was ready for the fight. "They're splitting formation," Harris said. 1 is moving to intercept us. 2 are headed for the Omega-1 device. The troop transports and the remaining Reapers are heading to New Rannoch. Zara watched as the Reaper approached. They reached weapons range and scattered while opening fire. The Reaper went after Dreadnought 1 first, but Captain Romer III had repaired the ship's engines and thrusters, allowing them to dodge the shot. They had considered trying to bolt past at FTL speeds. But then, all the Reapers would come after them, and they would escape the coming supernova. So they had dropped out of FTL to fight this battle. They fired the last few missiles they had at the Reaper. Alas, they didn't do much damage. "Time for Plan B," Zara said. "Send the signal." The Omega-1 device had been hidden in its pocket universe, but it hadn't created it or modified the original anomaly. That job had fallen to 12 satellites that had come out of phase with Omega-1 device. They were the Thoihan technology that Olaf had mentioned in the briefing room. Those units were normally controlled by the Prothean VI down on New Rannoch. The signal Ainjalit had sent was an emergency override, along with coordinates. The coordinates of the Reaper. Signal send, Rodriguez said. The satellites are moving, Skipper. 2 minutes and 40 seconds until the trap closes. Hit them with everything we've got. We have to keep this thing distracted. Aye, Skipper. The next 2 minutes were the longest in Zara's life, but in the end, the satellites arrived. The plan was working, because the Reaper was too busy trying to blast them to notice their arrival. They took up their positions, and there was an enormous burst of light and energy. It blinded the sensors for 28 seconds. When the sensors came back online, the Reaper was gone. "This is our window," Zara said as she activated the radio. "All ships, it's time to go. Back to FTL now." The fleet reformed and jumped back to FTL. Space. Inside a newly formed pocket universe, the Reaper called itself Lemurs. He blasted the Thoihan satellites that surrounded him to pieces with one shot each, but the bubble did not collapse, so he began emitting particles and things began to shift. Finally, he was back in the new Rannoch system. He scanned for his targets, but they were too far away to catch. Lemurs cursed in a long dead language. These blasted creatures would be crushed sooner or later. For now, he had a planet to help harvest. The clock hit 0. Ainjalit and her fleet were headed for the shell at maximum speed as the Omega-1 device began to glow as if it was pure fire. And then it released all the energy it had soaked up. Space itself warped. It was like New Rannoch was surrounded by heat haze. Except the haze was made from green-yellow energy. And then New Rannoch was gone. The Reapers had still been on approach when the clock had run out. Before they could retreat, the New Rannoch star went supernova. The explosion wiped all the Reaper forces off the map. But Ainjalit and her fleet were outside the blast radius. The Battle of New Rannoch was over. Epilogue. SSV Verdun. They had made it out of the Epsilon Nebula. None of the Reapers had. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Vale and Lieutenant Andrea Haley were running things in CIC, surrounded by a skeleton crew. Kepler and most of the crew were getting some much-needed sleep. "Commander," Haley said. "The Epsilon Nebula is collapsing. Looks like the satellites maintaining the shell have self-destructed." She paused. "Sir, shouldn't the supernova be pushing everything away?" "Yes, but remember that the supernova hasn't reached the edge of the nebula yet. And something happened here over 100,000 years ago, because that anomaly that the Thoihan modified had to come from somewhere. So the rules might not work as usual in the area that we used to call the Epsilon Nebula." "Exactly. If we survive the madness of this war, we're going to have to come back and get some answers. For now, we have a load of survivors to deliver to the Citadel." "Aye, Commander." Haley activated the intercom and began giving orders. SSV Ainjalit. Aaron and Olaf McKinley were sitting the mess hall. They were back to writing their report for Admiral Hackett. It was a good distraction as they headed back to the Citadel. "You know we're still going to have to deal with Mom and Dad?" Olaf asked. "After all this madness, that sounds like a picnic." Aaron said, "You think Admiral Hackett will read this report? He's in the middle of a war and New Rannoch has vanished. One problem at a time. Let's finish the report first." They continued working on their report. Next to them, Vara Tilos was sitting across from Thomas Rodriguez. "So what happens once we reach the Citadel?" Tilos asked. "First, we help the survivors settle on the station. That and we resupply, along with making any final repairs we need. After that, I don't know. It'll depend on our new orders from Admiral Hackett." "What about Dreadnought 1? "It no longer has a fleet to go back to, so where do they go?" "The skipper is making calls to get them into the Tyrian fleet. Apparently, she has several contacts that owe her favors. She'll make sure they'll land on their feet." Tilos nodded. She had a feeling that she would be here until the war ended, one way or another. And with Ayers and Rodriguez in charge of the Ainjalit, she figured they would have fighting chance. SSV El Alamein. Marcus O'Neill was in his quarters, writing his report for Admiral Hackett when the bell rang. "Enter," O'Neill said. Jill Daw entered with an electronic pad in her hands. She offered it to O'Neill and he took it. "We finished crunching the numbers, Skipper," she began. "We've done our best guess. Tried calculating where New Rannoch ended up, but we've never seen anything like this before." "I know, Amazon. Let's see what we have." He checked the pad. The math said that the planet was probably not in the Milky Way galaxy anymore. Instead, it was located somewhere in the Sagittarius dwarf spheroidal galaxy. Well, Hackett is not going to be happy about this, but if they survived the ride, they are outside the mass relay network. And that means that they might have a fighting chance of not being found by the Reapers. "Good work, Amazon. Dismissed." Daw nodded and walked out. O'Neill sighed and then got back to working on his report. The battle was over, but the war was only beginning.